Hi, so in this video, I'd like to show you how to build a data pipeline using Azure Synapse Analytics. So this is the website that I'll be using for this demonstration. On Microsoft Learn, build a data pipeline in Azure Synapse Analytics. You can go to this URL at the top, and I'll link that in the notes below. So I'm going to move this off to the side, and I'll be running off of this throughout the video. Okay, so the first thing I need to do is provision an Azure Synapse Analytics workspace. Now, the way I'm going to do that is to use the ARM template that is provided in the tutorial. So the first thing I did was I signed into my Azure Portal, going to portal.azure.com. The next thing I want to do is bring up the Cloud Shell. So in the PowerShell pane, I'm going to enter the following commands. First, I'm going to clear any data that I had in my Azure Shell before that may conflict with this demo. Next, I'm going to download the data from the repository that is going to enable me to generate everything that I need. So previously I had this MS Learn Databricks was the last one that I worked on, but today we want to work on the DP203 Azure Data Engineer. And this DP203 at the end is going to clone this repository into a folder on my Cloud Shell called DP203. And once that's done, I can take a look at my cloud drive, and I see that I have this DP203 there. I can take a look inside and see which folders I have there. Now, in order to run this lab, I need to go into the directory for where these files are stored for this particular lab. It's going to be labs 10, and in there you'll see but there is a setup.ps1 PowerShell script that I can run to set up everything. And if I take a peek at the setup.json, I can see information on what is going to be created when I run this script. So you can take a look inside here if you're curious. It'll store information about parameters that need to be set and any variables, and also what types of resources we need to create in order to run this lab. So I'm going to run this by typing /setup.ps1. You can see it's already in there. Arrow over to complete that, and then run this. It says starting the script. I'm going to bring this down while that is running. And so it's going to ask you for a password to use for the SQL user logon. I just use a generic password, admin1, and exclamation point. But you can use any password, and you should try to keep it a secret. I am going to be deleting this resource as soon as this video has been recorded, so there won't be any issue with somebody trying to go into my account here. So while that's running, it tells us to bring up a article to read. Data flows in Azure Synapse Analytics. So we can go and read this article, and then it'll come back. So I'm going to pause the recording and come back once that's finished. Okay, so the process has completed. We have created our resources that we need to run this demo. You see that the deployment name is setup. There's resource group that I'm going to show you in a minute. Shows you the name of that resource group. Tells us that it succeeded, gives us a timestamp and whether or not it's complete. There are also some parameters set. So we have all of these resources set. Synapse workspace, we have a data lake, we have a suffix given for each of our resources. We have a SQL database name. We have a SQL user, and we have the password that we set earlier. So you can dive into this and research more about what each of these parameters is describing. So the next step is that I'm going to view the source and destination data stores. Now, I need to go to my resource groups. I need to find the resource group that we created with that setup process. When we find it here, you see that unique suffix that it created for this resource group. And we have three things here. We have a data lake, which is our storage account. We have a dedicated SQL pool, and we have a Synapse workspace. We're going to be doing a lot of work in this Synapse workspace here. The next thing I need to do is go into that Synapse workspace. And I'm going to open Synapse Studio. And it brings up a separate tab. So I have my portal still active on this tab while I can work in my Synapse Studio on another tab. Once that is loaded, I'm going to go over to the Manage tab. You can take a look at what tabs we have on this side. You can expand this out. It will say what each of these icons is related to. I want to go to my Manage tab and take a look at my SQL pool. So I have my dedicated SQL pool, and there's also a built-in serverless pool that is online right now. We have a paused dedicated pool. So a word of caution when using dedicated SQL pools. These can incur pretty high costs if you leave these running. You really want to turn these off at any time that you are not using them for more than a couple minutes. So there's a reason why when we ran that script to generate all of these resources, that did not include the starting of the dedicated SQL pool. We need to be responsible for starting and stopping that. They helpfully have it paused at the beginning so that you do not incur any extra charges while you wait for the resources to be allocated to you. So we're going to go and click that play button. We're going to resume this dedicated SQL. And it can take a few minutes, so we can use the refresh button in the upper right. This one is always hard for me to see when I'm running this in full screen on my large monitor. I'm going to click it again. It's saying that it's resuming. Okay, and we see that our dedicated SQL pool is online now. So we can start exploring this. We're going to go onto the Data tab, and we're going to view the Linked tab and verify that our workspace includes a link to our Azure Data Lake Storage Gen 2 storage account, which was our Synapse and our unique suffix that we were given earlier. And this is our primary data lake. Let's see if we can explain this to. So this is our primary data lake. That was one of the resources that we saw in our resource. Here we can click into files and see which files we have. We have a folder for data, and in that folder, we can double click into here, right? And in that folder, we have a product.csv file. Now, if I right click on that CSV file, I have these options to create a new script, create a new notebook, create a new data flow. create a new integration data set. I can manage access, rename that file, I can download that file, I can delete the file, and I can check out its properties. So the option we're going to check out is to preview. We can preview the data. It gives us the URL where our data is stored. And it tells us when it was last modified. So we can look at which columns we have. We have a product ID, we have a product name, we have color, we have size, we have list price, and a discontinued. So all of that looks good. It looks like we generated that data properly. We're going to go into the Manage page, and we're going to ensure that our dedicated SQL pool is still online. In the Data page, on the Workspace tab, I'm going to expand the SQL database. And I'm going to go into this SQL database and examine its tables. You'll see that we have tables, external resources, views, programmability, schemas, and security. So when we go into tables, there we go. Now, I'm going to select the DBO DIM product table, and on the three dots here, I'm going to create a new script where I'm just going to use a predefined script that Azure gives us to select the top 100 rows. And it looks like that generated correctly. And so there is only a single row in this query. Okay, so the next step is that we are going to implement the pipeline. So it says to load the data in the text file into the database table, we'll implement an Azure Synapse Analytics pipeline that contains a data flow, encapsulating the logic to ingest the data from the text file, look up the surrogate product key column for products that already exist in the database, and then insert or update rows in the table accordingly. Under Create a Pipeline with a Data Flowing activity, the first step that we have is to go into Synapse Studio, which we're already in. We will click on the Integrate page, and we're going to add a new pipeline. And this brings up a canvas here. So in the Properties pane for our new pipeline, which is all the way on the right here, tucked away over here, so we're going to change this from Pipeline 1 to Load Product Data. Then we are going to use the Properties button above the Properties pane to hide it. So if I just click on that, it goes and slides to the right, out of the way. So in the Activities pane, I'm going to expand, Move and Transform. I'm going to drag a data flow onto the pipeline design surface. So that underneath the pipeline design surface, we have some general settings, some other settings, some parameters and user properties. So in the General tab, we're going to set the name from and change it from Dataflow 1 to Load Products. Then in the Settings tab, at the bottom of the list of settings, I'm going to expand the staging. We're going to change the staging link service to be our Synapse Workspace default start. That is our linked service that we're going to use. So we're going to change the staging storage folder. We're going to set the container to Files and the directory to Stage Products. So we're creating a staging area for our data. And the next step now is to configure the data flow. So at the top of the Settings tab for this Load Products data flow, we are going to set the data flow property. And we're going to create a new one. Now in the Properties pane, which is all the way to the right, we're going to set the name to Load Products Data. Okay, so now we can add some sources to our data flow. We are going to configure the source settings. As products text. The description we're going to give this is products text data. The source type we're going to set as integration dataset, which is already selected for us. The dataset that we're going to provide is going to be a new one. This will bring up a panel on the side for our new integration dataset. Click on the Azure Storage Gen 2. And we're going to use the limited text that was our CSV file. And the name, we're just going to give this products_CSV. And the link service we're going to use was our workspace default storage sitting in our Synapse workspace. The file path is going to be files/data/product.csv. We will use the first row as the header, and we're going to import the schema from the connection/store. Okay, so we're going to go onto the projection tab for the products text source. We need to click on the products text source, go into the projection. So we're going to set the product ID type to be string, the product name to be string, the color to be string, the list price, the size is going to be string as well. The list price is going to be decimal. So we'll select that from the drop down. And the discontinued is, as we inferred from before, is a Boolean value. Now, I'm going to add a second source. And give that source an output stream name of product table. The description I'm going to set as product table. The source type is an integration data set. I'm going to add a new integration data set using Azure Synapse Analytics. I'm going to give this the name dim product, and I'm going to use a new linked service. That linked service I'm going to call data_warehouse. The description I'm going to give this is a dedicated SQL pool. And I'm going to connect via the integration runtime, auto-resolve integration runtime. account selection method is going to be from my Azure subscription. And you can select your Azure subscription. The server name is my Synapse workspace. The database name is the SQL database name. The authentication type is going to be system assigned managed identity. You see managed identity name is here, and you can do that. You have a managed identity object ID as well. So we're going to create this linked service. Now we're back in the other settings. We want to give the table name as being DBO dim product. We'd like to import the schema from the connection. Okay, and the allow schema drift is in the source settings. So from earlier, we had our products text. We have our allow schema drift that is actually in source settings. And it's already selected for both our sources. So on the projection tab, we are going to set the data types here. We want a type of integer for product key, which is already set. We want a product alt key data type as being string, which it's already inferred as being a string. Product name is a string. Color is a string. Size is a string. Decimal is the list price, and Boolean is the discontinued. And we can verify that we have two sources just by examining the canvas here. Next, we're going to add a lookup. We're going to select the plus icon at the bottom right of the text source. We're going to select lookup. We configure the lookup with an output stream name matched product. And we give it a description of matched product data. We set the primary stream to products text. We set the lookup stream to product table. We leave match multiple rows unchecked. We'll match on the last row. And our sort conditions will be product key in ascending order. Our lookup conditions will be to use the product ID matching the product alt key. And you'll notice now that we have a connection from product table into matched products as well. So the lookup returns a set of columns from both sources, essentially forming an outer join that matches the product ID column in the text to the product alt key in the product table. When a product with the alternate key already exists in the table, the dataset will include the values from both sources. When the product does not already exist in the data warehouse, the dataset will contain no values for the table columns. Now we're going to add an alter row. So we'll select the plus icon from the bottom right of the matched products lookup, and we will select alter row in the row modifier section. We'll set the output stream name to set load action. We'll give this a description of insert new, upsert existing. The incoming stream will be set to matched products. We'll alter the row conditions with two conditions. We'll insert if the product key is null. And we'll add another condition that will upsert if the product key is not null. So the alter row step configures the kind of load action to perform for each row. Where there's no existing row in the table, the product key is null. The row from the text file will be inserted. So the alter row step configures the kind of load action to perform for each row. Where there's no existing row in the table, in other words, the product key is null, then the row from the text file will be inserted. Where there's already a row for the product, an upsert will be performed to update the existing row. This configuration essentially applies a type 1 slowly changing dimension update. So next we're going to add a sync. So in the bottom right of the set load action, we're going to select the plus icon and select sync in the destination section. We're going to give this sync an output stream name of dim product table. We'll provide a description called load dim product table. The incoming stream will be set to set load action as it's already connected. We'll use an integration dataset, and we'll use the dim product dataset. We will allow schema drift, and on the settings tab, we will specify the update method to allow insert and also allow upsert. The key columns will be a list of columns. Containing product alt key as the only column. On the mappings tab, we will clear the auto mapping selection. And we will specify that the product ID gets mapped to the product alt key, and the product's text product name, and the product name in the product's text source will be mapped to the product name. We'll map the color from the product's text to the color. We'll map the size in the product's text source to the size. And similarly, we'll do for the list price. And the discontinued. So make sure that we only have the product ID, the product name in the product's text source, the color in the product's text, the size in the product's text, the list price in the product's text, and the discontinued in the product's text. These are the only mappings that we will make. And we'll see that there is one column left out. So next we will debug the data flow. So now that we built a data flow in a pipeline, we will debug it before publishing. So at the top of our data flow designer, we will select the data flow debug, which brings open a sidebar here where we can review the default configuration. We'll accept these defaults and click OK. And we will wait for the debug cluster to start. And we'll know that the data flow debug cluster has started when this icon changes. Okay, so our data flow debug cluster has started as indicated by this checkmark. So now we will go to the DIM product table and view the data preview. We'll click refresh. So we will review the preview data, noting that it indicates one upserted row, which is the existing AR5381 product. So this is the indication for an upsert versus the inserts. So now we will publish and run the pipeline. So now we will use the Publish All button to publish the pipeline. We will confirm our pending changes and publish. When the publishing is completed, we will close the Load Products data flow pane and return to the Load Product Data pane. At the top of the Pipeline Designer pane, we're going to add a new trigger. We're going to select Trigger Now, select OK to confirm that we want to run this one. So we can also set a trigger to run this pipeline at a scheduled time or in response to any specific event. When the pipeline has started running, you go to the Monitor page and View Pipeline Runs tab. We review the status of the Load Product Data pipeline, which we see the date when it started and time, the duration, how it was triggered, the status, and the number of the run, additional parameters, annotations, and run ID. We can see that since it's in progress, the run end time has not been established. Continue to click refresh until our pipeline has completed. We see that our run has succeeded. We find the time when it finished, and we see that it ran in just under 4 minutes. Now we will go to the data page, and we'll use the 3 dots menu for the DBO-DIM product table. We will run the query that selects the top 100 rows. This table should contain the data loaded by our pipeline. Now that we are finished with this demonstration, I can go back to Manage. I can pause the dedicated SQL pool. And I can go back to my portal. I'll go back to my resource groups, select the resource group that we created, and click Delete Resource Group. I can copy the name of the resource group by clicking the 2 pages icon, and paste that into the field for entering the resource group to confirm rules. And that's how to build a pipeline in Azure Synapse Analytics. So I really hope this video is useful for someone who may not have access to a Azure subscription, but wants to see all of these steps played out in the Azure Synapse Studio. I hope that this helps somebody.